Now, let's start understanding the different concepts or different types, what TypeScript is bundled with, and what are the different features, and how you can use TypeScript well. And in that process, let's understand what are the different types. So we keep talking about TypeScript, right? So what are the different types are actually available in TypeScript? But what is actually a type? When you ask yourself, why types? Why do you need it? And what are types? Let's understand all of that which are present in TypeScript, right? So basically, if you ask me, let's say, let me add another file, temp.ts, right? So when I write down like this, console.log hello. So if I write down like this, you all know pretty much that this is a string, right? And you know this is a number, and you know this is an array, and you know this is an object, right? So what exactly type means? Type means if you take any variable, right, constant some variable, okay, is equal to hello, right? So this is a variable, this is the value of the variable, and now what is the type of this variable? It's a string. So basically, when you look at down like this now, console.log variable dot, see what are these different functions. I haven't written any of these, right? So when I put the dot operator, automatically I got all of these, right? What are these ideally? Okay, for a moment, let me get rid of this and type this even now. So I'm not storing it any variable. I just typed a string and I have put a dot operator. Immediately I got all the operations which are present on the string. So basically, the type of the value or a type is something which gives properties or describes about that variable. So if I frame it down correctly, type is a label or an entity which describes the variable, what it belongs to, what it is, like this. So when I declared a variable of string type, then another variable, let me add another variable, and I'm attaching the label or type as number, right? Now another variable dot, see, these are the functions which are available to us because of that type or label which we have attached. So the compiler or the engine knows that, okay, this is a number, so I can inherit the basic properties of any number or any string. So type is a label or an entity which describes the variable. This is the clear definition of a type, right? Need to understand the basics very clearly, which describes the variable. Like when I say, what is a bike? It has 2 wheels and it has 5 gears, and you put on something in such a fashion. It should describe what the object or what the entity is over there, right? And second thing, TypeScript or compiler or any compiler uses the type to identify syntax errors. So based on these types which we define, TypeScript or any compiler in any programming language, they determine, okay, if I am trying to access a function like this, variable.toFixed, right? This function is not possible on that variable because it is not of type number, but it is of type string. So to understand this, types are needed, types are utilized by the compiler to give us the suggestions, right? In TypeScript, we have majorly two different types of types, okay? Two different varieties. First one is primitive types. Second is object types, right? So these are the major different or segregated types inside TypeScript. We will discuss each of them clearly one by one, okay? Next, we will look at type annotation. So what is type annotation? Type annotation is nothing but the way, or it's a way where TypeScript understands what type it is, like annotating a function, annotating a variable, or what is the syntax to annotate, right? So if you just ask me, type annotation is nothing but constant, variable, and the type. So the syntax to write in this fashion is called as annotating the type. So I'm annotating that this type is going to be string, right? This type is going to be string, or it can be anything. So let me write down. It can be anything. Constant A is of type string of arrays, right? So I'm annotating this particular variable to be of string of arrays. So I have to define it like this, and I can annotate in a different fashion, like number array, object. You can define custom object, and in the same case, if I want to annotate a function, how do I annotate it, right? So constant some random function, sum, okay? So sum is going to be a slash number, b slash number, comma number, and this is going to return a number, right? So yes, so this is how sum of variables. So this is how you annotate a function. So this function is going to take two arguments. So I'm telling, or I'm informing my compiler that I'm by annotating that this function is going to take two variables of number type, of type number, and it is also going to return a variable of type number. So this is the return type. So I'm annotating it this way, and this is the arguments which I'm annotating is this way. So type annotation is nothing but informing the compiler, or this a syntax, a way of, it's a writing syntax form where you define, or where you tell your compiler that this variable is being annotated as string, number, or anything, right? Similarly, if you see, then we'll go into different primitive types, and then we'll go into different object types. But first, let me list down what are the different primitive types, right? Number, and then I have string, and then I have null, and then I have undefined, and then I have arrays. Sorry, arrays is not inside primitive. Then we missed one thing, boolean, correct? So boolean, null, undefined, and similarly object types, we have arrays, objects, and in the primitive types we have one more type called as symbol, and in objects arrays, tuple, and then we have functions, and then we have classes, then we have interfaces, all of these. So we have two types, majorly two different variants of types, that is primitive types and object types. In the primitive we have number, string, boolean. So basically number means all numeric types, and string means all text fields, you can say. Boolean, it has only two values, either true or false. Null, it has only one value, that is null. Null is also a type. Okay, so type of something can be null. Undefined is also a type, so it has only one value. It has only one value, that is null. Similarly, this also has only one value. It means in that entire type, string and numbers, it has infinite number of values. In boolean you have only two values, and in undefined it has only one value again, that is undefined. So here both the type and the value are same, and symbol is something which is constant, a constant type, or is something a constant value, right? Arrays, you in the object types, you already know that it's arrays means arrays, objects, custom defined objects, tuple, we'll talk about tuple, we'll talk about functions, we'll talk about classes, and we'll talk about interfaces, right? Now if you specifically look about the type number, right? So let me create a new file for it, number.ts, right? So in TypeScript, by default, all numbers are of type floating point or big int. But what are the different types of numbers we have in general in TypeScript, right? First, we have decimal numbers, and then we have hexadecimal numbers, then we have octadecimal numbers, and then we have big int, big integers, right? So we all know decimal numbers are normal. Oh, we missed one more thing, that is binary numbers, correct? So decimal numbers are normal decimal numbers. It can be integer, it can be negative integer, negative whole number, or it can be a floating point number like 1.110, something of that sort. So decimal numbers are the normal numbers, and we have binary numbers where your entire digit is going to be represented in the form of zeros and ones, like this. But here the notation is that it will always start with 0 and B. So when you write it in this form, TypeScript compiler automatically identifies this as the binary number. And hexadecimal number, similarly, it starts with x, 0x. So that is the notation, or that is the indication to the TypeScript compiler that this number is a hexadecimal number. And here you have the values from 0 to 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is, the range is 0 to 5, right? And hexadecimal, you already know it. And then we have octadecimals. Then octadecimal we have O, 0, O. So it starts with 0 and O. The indication for octadecimal numbers is that 0, O, right? And here in hexadecimal numbers, you know the different types of values available. And in the same way, in the octal also, you have 1 to 7. The digits can be anything in between 1 to 7. And big integers are the whole numbers, entire whole numbers, which are greater than 2 power 53 minus 1. So these are the entire set of all the big integers. So you can, everything is whole in the fashion same, like decimal, you will declare it in this fashion, 1, and constant binary, you define it in the same fashion, 0b, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, right? Because either 01 or 02, 01, and then we have hexadecimal, hexa, here the number. So for every type of variable you just do the same thing, hexa and 1 2, right? 1 2 and F, because it is allowed in the hexadecimal, you already know that, and constant octa, this is also number, and here it starts with 0 and O, and then any number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So till here it is allowed. And then we have another number, another type. So all numbers are of directly of type floating point, and you have some extra number that is big number, it is of type big int. Right? So it can be anything 2 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, something of this sort, something of this sort. It can be easily identified, but the only condition is that you have to end the difference between a normal number and a big int number is that you have to end it with n at the end. So this is, when you do this, the TypeScript compiler will understand that okay, this is of type number, but this is decimal number. This is okay, it is of type number, but this is of binary number, binary notation of it. This is hexa notation, that is octa notation, and this is big integer number. So it is strongly recommended for you to use both floating and big int numbers, because otherwise it's okay, it TypeScript compiler identifies, but it's just recommended for you to go with decimal and big int numbers in your application to stop expecting about unexpected things, right? So these are the different things about numbers. Next we'll discuss about strings. Next we get to discuss about the other important type, or the most used type in TypeScript, that is string, right? So what are strings, right? You already know that it's the text or group of words, whatever it is, right? So if I write string.ts, okay, so there are three different ways how you can declare a string, right? String variable is equal to hello, first thing. Constant, instead of naming this a1, I'll name it as a1. Then a2 is equal to hello, and it means that both the difference in between these two is that first you mention the type as string, right? So the difference in between these two is that one, you can use the double quotes to declare a string, double quotes, and here single quotes. In both of the cases it works fine. So in TypeScript both are allowed. And there is another thing called as backtick, or you could say something of this sort, like you can find it on the keyboard, left to the number key 1 on this side, left side of the keyboard, number 1, the number 1 left side to it, backtick. So the advantage of the backtick is that you can write multi-line strings like, hey, this is TypeScript tutorial talking about string types using the backtick, right? So you can write multi-line strings in the backtick notation. So here it is backtick notation, right? The advantage with backtick is, first thing, it is multi-line, and the second thing is, so when you want to append a string, again this is not the feature of TypeScript, it's the feature of ES6 or the ECMAScript, append the string. Like in both of these cases, if I want to append, like let's say I want to append both of these strings, then A1 plus A2, but if I want to write some extra character in between, so I have to do this way, A2 right? So here something of this sort, then what will happen, a1 will be printed with a comma and the a2 will be printed. So when you use any of this, the string concatenation becomes a bit difficult. You have to add plus symbol in between, and this looks very dirty when the string to be joined is very big or formed out of multiple variables. Then in that cases, the backtick operation is going to be really helpful, like this. So constant a4 is equal to, you can simply do backtick and dollar and the parenthesis. So this is called as string interpolation. String interpolation, and it's going to be something like this. So if you want to access any variable inside the string interpolation, you do it in this way. Now what happens, all the value inside the a1 that will be coming, and you can normally write the string in this fashion. And again, if you want to read any JavaScript or TypeScript variable, you just do this. So these two are one and the same. Constant a5 string is equal to a1 plus comma, then plus a2. What if I want to end it with a dot, right? Then again plus dot and colon. So here this gets really confusing when the string to be joined is very big, because you have to add plus, then double quotes. It looks really messy when you have to do this, but otherwise it's going to be of type string. The string interpolation can be easily done using the backtick, where you just have to put dollar and the parent flower brackets in between wrapped in, right? So this is all about string. It's very easy. You have bunch of functions on the string directly coming from the JavaScript. Next, we'll be discussing about the Boolean, right? So if you know the Boolean, there was a lot of confusion in terms of Boolean in JavaScript. So basically Boolean means true or false, right? But in JavaScript you have false comma falsy values. This is in JavaScript, not in TypeScript. TypeScript avoids that. True and truthy values. So for example, falsy values are null, undefined. Again, values, not the types. So even if something comes like this, if null, then in JavaScript this is treated as false, and if block is not executed. Whereas something of this sort, null, this is treated as truthy value, or something of this sort is treated as truthy value, empty array. So to avoid all of these confusions like this and string, all of this. So but in case of TypeScript, the Boolean values have only two values, that is Boolean type is having only two values, that is either true or false, right? So you declare a value constant truth, and if you assign it with a Boolean, then it can take only two values, either true or false. You cannot assign a string to it. So in the same way, true, and you have falsy to be false, right? So these are the Boolean values which we need to know. It's pretty simple about Boolean values, and this comes under the what do I say, the primitive types. And the other primitive types are null and undefined. Null is a type. It means if you do console.log type of null comma type of truth. So let's run this. ts node boolean.ts. See, the type of null is an object. Okay, we'll discuss about this later. But whereas type of truth is a Boolean. Okay, so type of is the operator which is helpful in determining the type. If you see like this, type of string, or like this, type of like this, it will return as the string, and type of number is going to return as the number, right? And if you see the type of undefined is undefined. So type of null is object. Please remember this. Type of undefined is undefined. So undefined is both the value and also type. Like if you see here, constant null value is equal to null, then the type of it will be type of null value is object. At the same time, see, I have assigned the type to be null, but again the compiler is reading it as object. So this is one confusion which you need to keep in mind. So if you are doing any null comparisons based on the type attribute, then please ensure that if it is a null keyword, null object, then the type of will return object. And in the similarly, if the type of some value is undefined, then that undefined values type is going to be undefined. So if you see undefined value undefined. So what is the difference between type of, what is the difference between null and type undefined? So null, it means the variable, the value is initialized to a value called, it means the variable is initialized to a value called null. In case of undefined, the variable is not at all initialized. So if I declare something like this, let some variable, right? And if I see the type of that variable, what it's going to return? Undefined. So null means it is defined, but the value stored inside the defined value is, inside the defined variable is null, whereas undefined is the variable has just been declared, but there is no value assigned to it. Hence that variable's type is going to be undefined. These two are pretty bit of confusing. You need to deal with them pretty clearly, I would say, and with cautious, right? So these are the two different primitive types which we have. Then we'll move on to the other topic, that is object types or the object type, right? Discussing about object type, and I would say this is one of the most confusing type in TypeScript. We need to understand it very clearly. So let's create a new file, object.ts, right? So first thing, object type is a non-primitive data type in TypeScript, right? So it is, first of all, we call it as non-primitive data type, like string, number, boolean cannot be assigned, or any of the non-primitive, null, undefined, or symbol. Those cannot be assigned to this non-primitive data type, that object type, right? So for example, you want to declare an object, right? A person. So he might have a name. So he will have a name, and he will have a place, some data structure, some data entity which will have all of these properties, 100, and country, India, right? And male, true, gender, whatever it is, right? So this is an object data type. If I hover onto it, it says something else, right? It is automatically determined. This is called type inference of Java TypeScript. It is automatically inferring, but to allot all different objects. So this is basically an object. Now what I have done is the type of person is an object. Object is a non-primitive data type in TypeScript. So either you specify this, it means it can hold literally anything, any number of keys and anything. But if you want to restrict it with only these values, then you can define the type straightforwardly. This is called as anonymous type, or type which can be used only once, unlike the string and any other type where you define it here. But here this is a dynamic type or one-time type, we can say. So place is going to be string, and then we have age is going to be number, and then we have country going to be string, then we have male going to be boolean. So either you can define this, but if you are not sure what amount of data you are going to store in it, then you can simply name it as object. So that's all about object data type. And the important thing on the object data type is that you get to access to all the functions like this. So if I do console.log person.toString, what will happen? ts node, see, I got something. It didn't throw me error, but it says something, right? To of string. What if I do to JSON? This is not present on that. So something like this, right? So if I run this now, I get to see the object. So toString is present on the object type, right? Now the confusion arrives over here. There are three similar or confusing object types. One is small o object versus capital O object versus an empty object. So see, it can be this, it can be this, it doesn't give any error, right? And it can be our normal object type. So first thing, we'll understand the difference. Understanding the difference is really important. Object data type is a non-primitive data type. It means you cannot do this. Person is equal to Vasudev. It throws an error. First thing, so it throws an error, says string is not assignable to type object, right? And so object is a non-primitive data type, right? It has functionalities associated on the prototype chain. Then you have object, capital O object. So this basically has the functionalities, whatever we are seeing, toString, toFixed, all of these basic JavaScript functionalities, or people say that this is the object from which all other types have been derived. So this is the parent object, and from this we are deriving all other subtypes like string, boolean, and everything. So this is the base reason for the functionalities. So to simply explain the functionalities of object like toString and all of these are actually defined on the object, but string, number, all of these data types have access to those properties with the help of the prototype chain. Okay, so understanding prototype chain is an advanced concept of JavaScript. You can go to that tutorial and you can understand that. Then you have an empty object. So this is also same, almost like object. The difference between object and this is that they are same, they are 100% same during runtime, but different during compile time. They are 100% same during runtime, but different during compile time. Let me show you an example. So let's say a human. Let human is of type object, right? And if I do this, human dot console dot log human dot first name, I'm trying to access a property which is not present on this, right? It is giving me an error. So on the compile time, it says does not exist on this. But what happens if I assign this, right? It says property first name does not exist on the type string. Similarly, if I try to access this value, that function is actually defined on the object type but not on this, but it is accessible through the prototype chain, which is the concept of JavaScript, how the different functionalities have been inherited in different places, right? So that's the core reason for entire thing. So object, and the empty parenthesis, right? These are really important object types. It's a bit confusing, but yeah, whenever you want to define or store a data structure which you don't know how many number of keys or values you are going to store, then you can simply assign the object. But it is strictly not recommended to do this, but instead define the strict type so that if something else comes into the program, it can be automatically stopped, right? Then we'll understand the next data type, that is array, right? Array data type is pretty simple. Array.ts, so constant a1. So first thing is this. So it says cannot a2. Okay, let's declare it as b1. So first, this is of type array, and literally it can store anything, like, and if you see here, type string number is not assignable to type. Source has 2 elements but target allows only 0 values. So what it is saying is, I have defined an empty array type, but you are trying to store 2 different values like this. So this is a bit confusing. So to avoid this, if you do this, so now this is b1 is of type array of strings. It means it can store any number of strings in it, but all has to be definitely string. So I cannot store a number in it, and it automatically throws a number. Number is not assignable to type string, right? Similarly, I can define a type object. So here I can say like this. So I can define an array of objects as well. I can but you cannot store the primitive types again. So basically, this object is pointing out to each single element. So each single element should be of type object. When I declare string, each single element should be of type string. So that's how you define array data type, right? Hyderabad, whatever it is. Yeah, so when you define the type array, you will get all the properties present on the array. So see, to string, unshift values, slice, pop, reduce, find, filter, length, map, and push. So these are the different functionalities which are available on type array. So that can be array of type strings, array of type numbers, array of type objects, array of both primitive and non-primitive data types. So array is one data structure. But the point here I have to highlight is that in JavaScript, an array can actually store any kind of data structure. So it means if in JavaScript, if you don't define this, right, if you don't define this, the same array can store a string, the same array can store object, the same array can store number. So when you're looping through the array, it becomes really difficult because JavaScript doesn't have control or doesn't restrict you to store the same type of data in entire its array. So it becomes really messy to check the type and access. Let's say on a string you have something else, the properties of the string or something else, the properties of number or something else, but TypeScript strictly controls that using this typing mechanism, right? Now we have another data type that is called as tuple. So what is tuple, right? So tuple is nothing but tuple.ts. so it's nothing but t1. Here you get to define, so it is almost similar like a array, but here you get to define the number of elements present inside it. So this is a tuple. So if you understand a tuple, first thing is similar to array, but tuple has fixed length of elements. First thing, tuple has fixed length of elements. It can store only fixed element. In the over here, in case it can store only 2 variables, and the data types are already predefined. It means the first value should always be string and the second value should always be number. So if somebody tries to store other than that, it gives an error. So a number is not assignable to type string, right? So here we are using the power of JavaScript, that as I just said, that JavaScript can literally store any type of data inside the array, like object, string or anything. So here, but the only restriction over here you are adding is that you are restricting on the number of elements, and you know that first element is always gonna be string if it is of type this, and second element number, and third element is going to be object, right? So a tuple is nothing but like to represent a database record. So if you see a database table is gonna have different columns, right? Like first name, last name, phone number, age, gender, city, all of these details. So when you are accessing or trying to store a database record, you know that first element, second element, third element is going to be this type of data. So on that places, tuple can be of really good help, right? So let me convert it. So it stop gives an array. So this is tuple. It is almost similar to array, but it has fixed length and data types need to be predefined. It is perfect use case to represent a database record. Now let's understand the other data type, that is any type. So sometimes you are not really sure what the type is going to be, right? So let's say I have defined something like this, any.ts constant, a function, some random function, okay, some random function, okay. So it takes I as parameter, and this I is going to be number, right? If I %2, if it is an even number, then you will return a string, else you will return a number. So in this case, either you can say the return type of this function is string or array, right? string or number. But if you are not really sure that this function is going to return only these two or it can return anything, you can simply say any. In the same way, if you are not really sure of any data type which you are going to accept or take or anything, then you can simply say any. Any means simply omitting the TypeScript types. So it means you're telling your TypeScript compiler that, hey, totally ignore the case types of these different data. So whatever it is, just allow it because I'm going to execute it. So it is not recommended because there is no point in using TypeScript and defining all types as any. But in some rare cases when you are not really sure what the type is going to be, to avoid in such cases you can declare it as any, but I'm strongly recommending it not to use because it's going to deviate from the actual concept of TypeScript and brings you a lot of trouble, right? Then we have void type. Void type means simply it returns nothing. So void means null. So if I say function any function void type, and if it's not returning anything, it is just doing some operations, then this is of type void. So void means nothing. So it's not going to return anything, it's not going to take anything, that's it. So arguments are of type void and the return type is also of type void. Similarly, you have the next one, the never type. We'll see what is never type. The other type is the never type, which I would say it is pretty much same as the void type. It means whenever you are not returning anything or whenever you are doing anything which doesn't have to return or it doesn't have any type, basically no type to it, right? So example, take this, like if this can be of string and function some value, and you are not returning anything, or let's say you are writing a code which runs infinitely. So even in this case you are not returning anything. So the type of this is either void or never. It depends on the version of TypeScript which you are using. So that's one thing. And if this error, if this function is going to throw an error, even in that case it becomes function type never or void. So basically void or array never type are going to be the same thing, right? So yeah, next we are going to define union types, right? So what is union of types? So basically sometimes you know that some value is going to be either of type string or number. So in this case here I'll define var okay, some value. So in this case what I have done is, this is the union operator. So what it does is basically it says variable where I is of type string or number. So anytime if you want to union two types or three types, you can simply say that it can either return this or it can either return that, right? For example, let's say I have defined some function and where I is going to be either string or number. So let's say, and this is going to return boolean. Okay, so if where I type of where I is equal to string, then return true, right? If type of where I is equal to number, then return false. I have written some small mistake over here and over here. Yes, so it can be both of type string and of type number. So where I here is of a union type, so you can union any number of types basically. It can be boolean as well, it can be anything. So when you are pretty sure that this is going to be either of these or that, or in three of these, any one, so you can union the types, you can union function return types, you can union parameter types, you can define your own union type of the custom defined types. We'll see how to define our custom types in the coming forward lessons. Yeah, that's all about the basic types, and these are the different basic types available in TypeScript which you will be using throughout your TypeScript development process, right?